Yeah, thanks very much. But good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Emergencies Board. We don't have any apologies that I'm aware of because all the members are here. Any declarations of interest? Councillor Campbell?
Yes, Convener. I work for NHS Agency, but not in this HSCP, so I will be participating in all the items discussed today.
Thank you very much for that.
Can we not just make that a standing one?
Yeah, we can, if you're happy to do that. Yeah, we'll do that then. Thanks very much for that. Can we agree the minute of the previous meeting, pages 3 to 8? Councillor Mackay, can you agree the minute?
Yeah, I wanted to just raise a small matter on the minutes. I noticed that the minutes tend to be a summary of the Chief Executive's report, and we just approved them. But the minutes never actually mention any discussion or matters or concerns raised by more board members. And I was wondering if there's a reason for that.
The principle is the exact same in any board. The thing, it's what we decide is usually recorded, but I'll let Ken come in and explain it to you. Ken?
Yes, Councillor McGurk, you've in fact explained it. What happens with the minute for the meetings, it's meant to be the official record of the decisions that are taken by the board. It's not meant to be a verbatim note of points raised by any of the members at the board. I suppose it's a little bit different with this one in that there is actually a recording publicly available of the proceedings of this board anyway. So if anyone does want a word-for-word note, or if they want to identify points that have been raised by individual members, then there is a record of that that's available on the website.
Okay, I just thought I'd ask the question because I have noticed over the weeks that some of the matters we discuss aren't mentioned in the minutes, and I just was wondering what the logic was behind that. Thank you for that answer.
Okay, anyway. Thanks for that. Councillor Devine, can you agree the minute of the previous meeting? Eddie, your mic.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Nicholson?
Yes.
Councillor Campbell, Michelle, can you agree? And myself, that's it, recorded that we've all agreed the previous meeting. Right, we'll go to item, there's she. Yes, can we go to item 2, update on COVID-19, page 9 to 24. Sandra, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, members. I hope you're all well, and I hope you found this week's report helpful in understanding the current position nationally on the pandemic and the main features of the Council's response locally. Section 3 of the report provides a summary of the most up-to-date national data on confirmed cases in hospitals and the number of deaths. As noted last week, the number of confirmed cases continues to rise, but thankfully again this week at a lower rate of increase, about a 20% increase over this week compared to 30% last week. So that is positive news for the country and reflects the flattening of the peak of the virus that's been referred to in many press briefings. Sadly, the number of deaths in the meantime continues to rise and at a UK level breached the 20,000 mark earlier this week. And you'll see at paragraph 3.3 that at a UK level for the first time, the number of deaths reported now includes those in care homes and in the community, and those figures have now risen to over 26,000 deaths across the UK and 2,272 in Scotland, and I believe those figures rose again today. Paragraph 3.5 also notes that for Scotland, 36% of all deaths last week were COVID related, and since the outbreak began, 39% of all COVID registered deaths have been in care homes. You will also be aware from recent media statements that this week saw for the first time in Scotland over 50% of all COVID registered deaths being in care homes, and we will pick up on Renfrewshire's position on that later in the report. The rest of section 3 covers some of the main national policy statements, including the use of face coverings in public, increasing access to testing for key workers, which we will come on to, and the use of PPE for unpaid carers and personal assistants. The report also refers to the statements made yesterday by both the Prime Minister and the First Minister around the growing speculation and demands made on government to ease the restrictions on lockdown. Both reflected on the fact that the lockdown was proving effective in controlling the transmission of the virus, but also appealed to the public to continue to strictly observe the conditions of lockdown, and the First Minister in particular expressed concerns about the increasing volumes of cars on the road and the increasing use of public transport, and reminded us all that we should only be travelling when absolutely necessary and essential. In the Prime Minister's statement yesterday, he reinforced the 5 tests which would need to be met before the lockdown would be relaxed, and it's expected that both governments will set out further plans for the phasing of this in the coming week. And we will keep all members updated through our normal communications channels on this. I'd like now to move on to section 4 on care homes, a service that has been at the heart of the Council and the Health and Social Care Partnership's response to the crisis. The report sets out the current position for our care homes and those people living there. And I'd like to now bring in David Leese to take you through this part of the report and that on the support for mental health and wellbeing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sandra. David, would you like to come in, please?
I would. Thanks, Sandra, and thanks, Chair. I've got a quick update which I'll talk through if that's okay, and then happy to pick up any questions. First of all, I just want to kind of add my own observations and comments to those that have already been made, both today and previously, just about noting kind of my personal sadness and personal sadness and condolences for those people who are unwell, but also those who've lost close family members in our care homes. The impact of the virus on local care homes continues to change, and it does change not just daily, but it changes kind of in the course of each day. The expansion of testing to residents of care homes is now beginning to have an impact on the numbers being reported. The information to date has been reported on both symptomatic cases and those where we've seen deaths in care homes. As testing becomes more widespread, the data will increasingly be based on confirmed cases. The number of care homes affected by COVID so far is 11. That's 11 of the 22 care homes that we have in Renfrewshire, and this is an increase on one from the last report, and now includes also one of the HSCP operated care homes. In line with the national reporting, there's been an increase in the number of residents who have sadly died of reported COVID-related symptoms or COVID positive confirmations, and the cumulative reported infections is further. So that figure for Renfrewshire is now 84. There is a further group of residents who are reported as being symptomatic, and this group has continued to show a decrease, which is a positive news item over the last 2 weeks. And the figure of reported infections has reduced from 27 to 18. And again, I just wanted to kind of restate personally my own condolences to the family and friends of those residents who have sadly died. We are taking further steps to try and make sure that we continue to have day-to-day contact with care homes across Renfrewshire. We've also been working closely with the Care Inspectorate in that regard. And I think you'll recall from last week, we also made reference to the request made on directors of public health and health boards for them to now initiate a programme of work across the care home, all the care homes in Greater Glasgow and Clyde. So we certainly have weekly meetings with, or led by the Care Inspectorate. We're working with the Strategic Inspector and also her team manager, and also with John Traynor, Chief Social Work Officer. And these meetings are essentially a kind of a virtual roundtable discussion led by the Care Inspectorate. And we've used that time and space to share and verified local data, and also the reported data that the care inspectorate themselves pick up. We're also working to identify care homes where they have infections, new infections. Those discussions also focus on any issues or concerns that might be emerging from any of the party around the virtual table that we meet. At the meeting yesterday, for example, we spent quite a bit of time talking about the one care home, particularly that's been in the media, Elderslie, and we were talked about the enhanced support work that's been going on both with them and with others. I've referenced earlier just the work around public health and the kind of the public health enhanced offer. That kicked off last week, where the Director of Public Health initiated a survey across all of the 196 care homes across the wider Greater Glasgow and Clyde area, including the 22 locally. And that initial stage of work is now complete. The next step of that work is to undertake what you might call a risk assessment of each care home, looking at the number of transmissions and infections and also number of deaths. And from that, we will start to, through public health, offer support to those care homes. And we are trying to make sure that we tie that work together with the issues that are emerging through our local work with the Care Inspectorate. One of the steps that we took in advance of that, which certainly will be complementary to that, is that through our clinical director Stuart Sutton and our associate clinical director Chris Johnston, working together with Siona Strachan and others, we have started what you might call a kind of an enhanced care home liaison support, and we've been working with a number of care homes to do that, and that led to a virtual meeting yesterday where we included a number of our care homes, where we had a discussion which was offering some kind of reflective time to think about what's happened in those care homes, how they are managing residents in those care homes, and to explore where possible any further advice and support that we can offer to them. And we believe that will be directly complementary to the work that the Director of Public Health will be taken forward. And in fact, I've spoken to Linda de Castica today about that to make sure that she's cited on the kind of approach that we have taken forward. So that's the update on where we are with care homes. I can pause at that point if that's appropriate for any questions before I go on to the next part of the paper, just about the enhanced work we're doing around mental health and well-being, if that's how you want to take it forward, Chair.
Yeah, I haven't got any questions from members. Any members wish to ask David any questions at this point? Eddie, are you wanting to come in? Eddie, your mic's not on. You're still.
Right, okay. On page, well, item 4, support for communities under care homes. Obviously, he's saying that the numbers are going up, but in the following page under 4.6, it says, in addition with the care at home services, there is a small but growing number of people living within their own homes with suspected or confirmed COVID-19. How are we dealing? Are we dealing with that as well through the HSPC? And it says a growing number. Do we have numbers on that?
Okay, David, that question's for you.
I don't have the numbers to hand just now, but so where people become symptomatic, what they will typically do is they'll typically contact their GP. They will have essentially a telephone triage at that point. That might further progress on to have a telephone consultation or video consultation with that person or with that person and other family members. Subject to what comes out from that assessment, that person may be judged to require simply advice about staying at home and managing their symptoms with an intake of fluids, with paracetamol, that kind of treatment regime. But if their symptoms become more problematic over the course of time, then they can be referred on to our local COVID community assessment centre, which is based at Linwood, where they can undergo an assessment, a more comprehensive assessment, That's certainly the routes that we would normally take, and where we have those individuals who are symptomatic or COVID positive, they need to continue to receive a care at home service. We obviously do that with all due caution, applying all best advice around how we should interact with that type of service user, making sure that our staff members apply best practice around social distancing, use of PPE. For example. So we certainly have a number of examples like that.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Devine?
Yeah, no, I don't want to start scaremongering, and hope I'll not mention names or numbers, but it says a small but growing number. Are we talking the small number? Are we talking in single figures rather than double figures and growing? Because that's quite concerning that if it's growing in the number of people's homes. And obviously our staff are going to these homes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers immediately to hand. I'm happy to kind of confirm those numbers back to Councillor Devine later on. But it's consistent with the fact that we are seeing growing transmission rates across the population.
Okay, if you can share it with the members of the board, that would be appreciated. Are you fine with that, Councillor Devine?
Yeah, it's fine. Thanks, David.
Okay, thanks very much for that. David, were you going to come on to the mental health and wellbeing support section?
Yes, I can do. Thanks,
Yes,
Chair.
please.
So what this part of the paper just describes is how we have been further developing the way in which we are supporting individuals. So members have been previously briefed through our input to the emergency boards about the work through the local assistance helplines, particularly working with those who are shielding or vulnerable. And what this describes is how we are looking to add to that to provide some assistance where people are contacting us and are expressing any concern around their personal mental health and well-being. We've been working with RAMH, a well-known local organisation, and where callers are already known to us, then obviously we have some history, some understanding about their circumstances. That's more straightforward. Where callers are not already known, then RAMH will contact that individual in the first instance and make sure that they are exploring the concerns that the individuals might have, and start to have a discussion with them about how we can support them in terms of helping them with their mental health and well-being. We've also increased our arrangements with a local organisation called Crisis First Response. They have a contract with RAMH that we've also benefit from, and that's also been added to, so that anybody else who perhaps isn't shielding or isn't vulnerable, but it may well be experiencing some challenges as a consequence of the current lockdown and social isolation, there's a route there also for them to access through their helpline advice and support, which includes a range of counselling and other advice services. So it's just to kind of flag to members of the board that we are continually looking at what we are able to offer by way of support, and recognising that you've probably seen yourselves in the media that there's a growing sense that where people are having to socially isolate and lockdown, then people do benefit from this kind of input where that's appropriate.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Councillor Nicholson, you wanted to come in and ask a question?
Hi, yeah, I'm coming in. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm just coming in this particular item. It's probably something to do with. I do know that people have been commenting positively about the fact they get phone calls. I don't know if it's probably weekly, asking how they're keeping and if they're needing anything. These are people who are in, I think, the shielded brackets, and I don't know whether it's priority 1 or 2 or how extensive it is, but I'm just relaying back the fact that I don't know how extensive that is, that phoning people up who are on the receipt of support, but it's obviously it's helping those people with their mental health as well.
Yeah.
And it's obviously supporting them in a different way from just physical needs. But I'm just saying it's been noted and it's been really appreciated by a lot of people that that's part of the support package. So the question I really have is how widespread is that? Because I'm wondering whether that's just some super keen individuals that are doing it. But again, I had a constituent this morning contact me and say she really appreciated the fact that the local teacher and local school contacted them to say that a new school hub was opening up and knew that they were key workers and offered them places. So I don't think it's well known the extent of the network of support that's been built up around all this. And it's not all just about food parcels and about making sure people have got their daily needs. So it's just really probably for another day is to have some we look at how this network all comes together, and emotional support is part of it as well. So I was just wondering if that was part of the offer that we put out for the Shieldy group as part of the food delivery, or is it? I'm not thinking it's done by RAM-H, etc., because there'll be literally hundreds and hundreds of people involved in that. So it's just a sort of put that out there and a question attached to it. Thanks.
I think I know. Yes, Sandra, you wanted to come in?
No, I was just going to say, Councillor McGurk, that it is a very deliberate part of the support that we're providing to the shielded group, and we're happy to bring more information back on that at a later date, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I actually was going to reiterate, I'm aware of the work that they do, and it is a combination of our partners in the Health and Social Care Partnership and officers from the council who, when they're phoning the shielded people, looking to see what their needs are and learning a wee bit more about their individual needs, noting that and making a point of going back and seeing how they're doing later on. So it would be worthwhile to bring that back, Sandra, for the members to see more detail of that work. David, thanks very much for your... are you finished or do you wish to continue? David?
I'm finished if there's no further questions, yes.
No, thanks very much for that, David. Sandra, I'll bring it back to you.
Thank you, Chair. The rest of section 4 does provide an update on the work the Council and partners are doing to protect the shielded and vulnerable residents, which is growing in volumes as the shielded list expands, and the team are also making excellent progress in contacting a very large proportion of them to ensure that they continue to have what they need in this difficult period of isolation for them. The virtual hubs, which we briefed the board on last week, are also now up and running, and our work with volunteers has developed further in the past week. I'd like to bring in Laura McIntyre just to tell you a little bit more about the work of the volunteers for the information of members. Convener, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Laura, would you like to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to provide an update to the board on the work that's been done in relation to volunteering locally. As previously reported to the board, we are working with Engage Renfrewshire to coordinate both the local and national volunteering offers. As of today, 229 local people have registered with the Renfrewshire Volunteer Reserve Bank, and about 1,000 have signed up to the National Scotland Cares campaign. We've managed to transfer about 150 of those from the national campaign to the local reserve to make sure that we have the most up-to-date information about those volunteers and can use them as proactively as we can going forward. The key things I'd like to highlight in terms of the volunteering locally is that the numbers on the reserve bank that I've reported regularly don't, I suppose, fully reflect the true picture of volunteering locally, with almost 700 local people now volunteering across local food, wellbeing and resilience efforts across community organisations. Since the update I gave to board last week, we've identified 59 further volunteers who are in the process of being inducted to support the 7 neighbourhood hubs, and we would hope that they would become, I suppose, operational and active next week. There's some final checks that we're working through, given the access that those volunteers will have to vulnerable people and to information. We just have to make sure that we undertake final checks, I suppose, on top of those that have already been undertaken in terms of the Council's duty of care. The report highlights some of the roles that we'll be asking volunteers to undertake, and you'll note it is very varied. Some of it is physically doing things in terms of going to collect things, whether it's shopping or whether it's helping with errands. A significant proportion of it will be virtual, in the sense that people will be asked to support people who need to connect to others, or who have, I suppose, quite specialist needs that we would like to try and help and support through volunteers locally. The hubs are developing really well this week, and have handled a small number of referrals, with the bulk of the work this week being centred around establishing relationships with these local groups and organisations who are already out undertaking some of this work within local areas. We anticipate that the number of referrals next week will start to increase quite significantly as these volunteers come on board. They are very, very critical to the work that we want to do going forward. And key to that will be working with local people to try and help them as much as possible to live as independently as they can and to access support that suits their own individual needs. People increasingly are telling us that they want to be able to do that as much as they possibly can, and we will work with people to make sure that we're able to help them to do that based on the offers of support that we've got from the volunteers. In terms of some wider developments around volunteering in the neighbourhood hubs, as highlighted in the paper, just like to flag up some of the excellent work we've been doing with Remshire Leisure around looking at kind of a bespoke digital and library support type of service for people who are very isolated. I know that has been a concern of the board over the last couple of weeks, with citizens in different settings who don't have access to to information, and also to some of the simple pleasures in life that are keeping them going whilst they're in isolation. And that's been an initial piece of work that's been supported by Remshire Leisure and the librarians that work within that service. I'd like to thank people for the numerous offers of support that we've had from local citizens and from business, and it's clear that there is a great level of support and a real appetite locally to work in partnership in this way, and we're looking forward to taking this forward with the volunteers.
Thanks very much for that, Laura. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Some of the feedback that I'm getting is just showing a remarkable community spirit out there. Sandra, do you want to come back in?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, just getting a video back on.
That's okay.
If there are no questions on the volunteering, then I'll move on to section 5 of the report, which...
Okay, sorry, Alistair's just come in. Sorry about this, Sandra. Alistair, do you want to
fine.
Yes, volunteers. It's admirable that there are all these people stepping forward. But I'm getting suggestions that certain demographics of volunteers are not being used at the moment. I'm wondering if that's just a reflection on the number of volunteers available, or whether maybe age or some other factor plays a part in the selection of volunteers.
Sandra?
Not to my knowledge, Councillor Mackay. I'll maybe bring Laura in to see if she knows more about the selection process. I would expect, though, if any of the volunteers fell into any of the at-risk categories that had been identified by the government, then it may be that they might not be considered suitable for certain types of volunteering, where that meant leaving their homes, for example. But I'll bring Laura in to see if she has any further information.
Laura, thank you. Can you come back in? Thanks.
Yes, of course. In terms of the process, the way that this has been undertaken is that we've advertised roles and the types of activities that we would like people to undertake, and there's a self-selection there. So we're really asking volunteers to I suppose to support in whichever way they feel that they're able to, recognising that different people maybe do have maybe some concerns about doing things physically and face-to-face activity, which is very, very limited and would be a doorstep delivery only. But also, if people potentially do have any sort of physical disabilities and would like to volunteer in a way that's suitable to them, we would absolutely facilitate that. So there's no purposeful matching of different volunteers in different ways. It's very much around asking people what they feel they're able to do, and us working with them to make the most to take the most value out of that. Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, thanks for that. Councillor Mackay.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, Alistair, if you're aware of volunteers that are not being utilised, then would you contact Laura and let her know?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thanks for that. Sandra, you want to come back in? Thanks.
Yes, thanks, Councillor McGurk. Just moving on then to section 5 of the report, which focuses on the support to staff. We want to specifically focus this week, if we can, on staff testing for all key workers, which started this week. And I'd like to bring in Alan Russell on this item to update the board on our progress. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. Alan, you want to come in? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor McGurk. Yeah, just section 5.7 through to 5.17 of the report just looks to summarise the position on staff testing, and as outlined in the report, you know, this is an important element now of maintaining resilience across our staff and establishment, and maintaining as many of our staff working in terms of delivering services as we can. And I think it's touched on in the report, the benefits that the testing allows is it provides the opportunity for where a staff member is displaying symptoms, or indeed any individual within their household is displaying symptoms, the ability to be tested to identify whether or not they are positive or negative. Whereas prior to the testing, it would just involve a period of self-isolation. So where there's a negative test, that allows us to allows the staff member to return to their duties much more quickly. So it's a real benefit in terms of maintaining resilience levels across our services. So in terms of the section of the report, it covers firstly the testing arrangements that are operating across NHS and social care within the health and social care arrangements. Those have been available for longer than the other areas of the services. That's predominantly delivered through the NHS arrangements for testing frontline NHS staff. As touched on in the report, it has expanded to utilise the facility set up by the UK government at Glasgow Airport, utilising that as well, where their own capacity is full, and again it allows both staff and members of their households to be tested. And at 5.10 of the report, you can see the benefits of the testing arrangements, where to date 53 HSCP staff have been tested. 28 did not test positive, and that's allowed 21 to return to frontline duties, and that's, as I said, is much quicker than would have been possible under the previous arrangements without testing. So it does provide a real benefit to service resilience. At 5.12 onwards, the report outlines, as of effectively over the weekend last week, the testing arrangements were expanded to other key workers, both in terms of public services, but also key critical areas in the private sector. The broader test arrangements, I think, as we've discussed, is being delivered through predominantly a drive-through facility, and in terms of our area operating at Glasgow Airport. As part of this UK programme, which is running alongside the NHS one, there's also the option for a home testing kit for those individuals who are not able to travel by car or other vehicle to the drive-through facility. So, as touched on in the report, we at the beginning of this week look to quickly adapt our HR processes that are supporting the COVID-19 absence arrangements to ensure that staff who were reporting as being symptomatic, or somebody within their household were reporting as symptomatic, that they were provided support to access the new testing arrangements. The mechanism that's we expect the vast majority of staff in this position to use is the referral online portal that's established by the UK government, and that allows the staff member to book tests for both themselves and their families, and they're able then to receive their test results via text, usually within 48 hours of the test occurring. For those staff that are not able to do that self-referral process, or indeed are not comfortable, the council is now established as a registered employer, and that allows our HR team to do that on their behalf, and there are arrangements set up to provide that facility for staff in that position 7 days a week. So in terms of the staff, the key workers that in terms of the council non-HSCP staff that we're talking about, 515 just outlines who they are. They're predominantly those workers that are working in frontline service delivery, including those areas where they may be volunteering, so it doesn't necessarily link to a staff member's core duties. There's a recognition that they may be working in other duties that are critical to the COVID-19 response. I think just really the remainder of that section really outlines how the process works, and you'll see that there's quite a tight window of opportunity in terms of testing. So there's been a big communication campaign across our managers and staff to really push the importance that in day one people should be reporting those symptoms. That allows the test to be booked quickly, because the test needs to be completed ideally within 3 days of someone being symptomatic, 5 days maximum. So there's a tight window to allow that to happen. So there's, as I said, support arrangements in place to make sure that staff are able to access the test arrangements quickly. They're able to communicate that back to their manager, and where those tests prove negative, that will allow us to get staff back to their duties much more quickly. In terms of the non-HSCP staff, it's really only been effective from probably Wednesday, but in terms of the staff reporting, either them or a member of their family symptomatic since Wednesday, 60% of the staff have been triaged into the testing arrangements. So I think that gives us an idea of the level of benefit that we'll get from this moving forward.
Thanks very much for that, Alan. Now, Alan has actually responded to section 5.7 to 5.17 of the question, but members are asking for questions regarding section 5.1 to 5.6. Councillor Nicholson, you're first, and then it's Councillor Devine after that, and then Councillor Mackay.
Okay.
Yeah,
thanks for turning it my weekly hobby horse. I don't know, it's probably a question for David. I don't know if he's still there, he's left, but it's a question anyway about the hub, the PPE hub. I understand they've moved to a template model this week, and there's been a number of questions raised. I've heard of the response time for when the services fill in the template, submit it to the hub, and then the response time for the hub to get back to them to say, you know, what the timescale is, what PPE they will get, when it'll be ready, and when to collect it. So, and I also understand that all the hubs around, even within the Greater Glasgow and Clyde Health Board area, they all seem to be interpreting the rules differently, and they're all coming up with their own sort of wonderful ways of dispersing the PPE around. But my main question is really about the Renfrewshire one, as I say. So the hub model's changed obviously over the past few weeks as well, so it's really just a question for how is that hub now working, and an answer to that particular question about the response time back to the services that are requiring the PPE, because I've heard people saying that they've been told don't contact us until you've only got 2 days PPE left and things like that. I'm not saying that's the Renfrewshire one, that might be other hubs around, but I just really wanted to know how it's operating in Renfrewshire. Thanks.
Okay, David, do you want to answer that one first?
I can, yes, as best I can. I mean, the way in which the hubs are working has changed quite a bit in the last 2 or 3 weeks, mainly in response to the way in which we've moved from an ordering-based approach, which was primarily through the NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde procurement process, and then also through the NSS social care triage route. And we've been talking with NSS and Scottish Government for a couple of weeks now, and the end of last week they announced they were going to move to a kind of push model whereby they were pushing out to us the totality of what we understood to be the weekly demand for PPE across all health and social care, including registered services. Now, as I sit here today, we are still working our way through some of the steps in that process, but we have now shared with the NHS National Supplies Scotland what we believe to be the totality of our weekly need. As we sit here today, we've probably got sufficient supplies to get us through until the back end of next week, which is a very positive place to be. We are operating a system that is, I think it's fair to say, Councillor Nicholson, we are developing it as we go along. What we don't want to do is to push out too much supply when we haven't got a huge amount of supply. We don't want to push out too much supply to individual organisations, but we have tried to make sure they have got somewhere between 5 and 7 days supply. I'm happy to pick up any individual inquiries that have been made through you, that may have been made through us. I'm not aware of any that have been made directly through us, but we are as proactive as we can be with all parts of our own services, but also with all registered services to make sure that they have access for at least 48 hours in advance for all of their PPE needs. And as at today, I'm not aware of anybody not having sufficient supply to make sure they get through until the beginning of next week as a minimum.
Yeah,
okay, thanks for that. Okay, Councillor Devine, you're next.
Yeah, thanks. It's in regard to the stocks PPE we've got in the report of 5.1. We've got a sufficient supply for the next 7 days. Now, further on, it does say, and I think it's 5.2, the extra people who may need PPE. And also further on in that, I think there's 21 different types of people or types of jobs that could get it. Will we have enough supplies to do if we've only got 7 days? If this is expanded to all the people who may need them, well, is 7 days going to be enough, David?
The delivery of PPE has been, I think it's fair to say, inconsistent.
Yeah.
We have been hoping to move to a model whereby we have a single delivery per week for at least the week ahead, but we haven't managed to get to that position just yet. We know that we will get deliveries over probably the next 2 to 3 days. So over the course of the last 5 weeks, there's never been a point when we have not been able to meet all of the requirements for everybody who needs PPE. That said, we do accept that there are a growing number of organisations and individuals that require access to PPE. The recent development, of course, being the extension of PPE to unpaid carers, and personal assistants. We did have a pre-existing arrangement with personal assistants where we were proactively contacting the 60 SDS holders who had personal assistants. So the list is growing, but I think it's fair to say that the system of ordering and delivery is maturing, I think is the fair phrase. But we will continue to use all of the intelligence and all of our understanding to make sure that we've always got sufficient supplies of PPE to meet all the needs that we have.
Councillor McGurk, could I come in just to add to that a little bit, if that was okay?
Yeah, can I let Councillor Mackay come in with his question first, if that's okay?
I wasn't finished, Marie, but I'll come back in later on. It's not a problem.
Well, Sandra, if you want to come in just now, and then I'll ask Alice to come in.
It was just, I suppose Councillor Devine had also asked about the additional job roles that were identified that may need PPE moving forward. And I think that really refers mainly to when the lockdown is released and the phasing of that. So that's something that we've got under review. Those people don't need PPE until such time as they are returning to work in some capacity. So that's something that we will keep under review as the lockdown restrictions are lifted, but it's something we're obviously very, very alert to. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Sandra. Councillor Mackay, do you want to come in, please?
Yes, it was. I was having some thoughts on the similar theme as the questions you've been asked, and it was based around the fact that the First Minister earlier in the week on television said that the way forward will probably involve the population using face masks or face coverings going forward in the medium term. And I was looking at the sort of fact that we've only got stocks of PPE for 7 days, and at some stage the demand for face masks is going to go ballistic, and I'm just concerned that maybe 7 days is enough.
Okay, I think you. Yeah, Sandra, you want to come in?
Do you want me to come in? Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the general use of face masks by the public, they were being encouraged to use the non-medical type, and to, where possible, make their own. And there's been quite a bit of coverage of that on television and so on. So we would hope that the type of PPE and face masks that are being used by our staff are not the same types of face masks that may be used by members of the general public moving forward.
Yeah, that's right. Councillor Mackay, is that okay for you?
Yes, in fact, I did notice on social media today that boxes of surgical face masks are trading at £50 for a box of 50.
That's shocking. That's anyway, I don't know how to comment on that. Thanks for noting that. Councillor Michelle Campbell, would you want to come in, please?
Thank you, Convener. I suppose it dovetails with a lot of the conversation already. I think it's really welcome to see that unpaid carers have now got that central support there, and obviously Renfrewshire's carers are assisting with some of that communication. I think it would be important for the council, if they haven't already indicated that they're going to, that we get an idea of the demand. I'm sure that the carers centre will have that direct contact a lot of the time, although we will obviously get some specific numbers through the helplines as well, just because it will have an impact overall. I think that need has always been there, but we need to have a realistic understanding of the numbers for the different types of PPE that we require for people in the community versus those in healthcare type settings and care homes. I also have a slight concern regarding, although we may have that, and I do understand this might not be an easy question to answer, but I feel it needs to be put out there, which is that when you have a setup where you have maybe certain numbers of COVID cases, certain members of staff that are working with those individuals, what happens when clinical needs change, and therefore the type of PPE and the amount of PPE of certain levels are going to change with that. So although we're saying we have a 7-day supply, is that of the baseline PPE? When it comes to higher grades, how much of that do we also have? And if someone needs change in a certain clinical environment, how quickly can the staff then access the PPE that is required for them in that area? These are just questions that I have in my head, but I think these are important ones that we need to start answering now that the supplies are beginning to come through. Thank you.
David, can you help with that, please?
Well, hopefully for reassurance, as we sit here today, we have the full range of PPE that we believe is required based upon HPS advice, given the nature of the service user and patient groups that we have, both in bed-based services but also in the community. So typically for planned events where somebody is going out to somebody's home or otherwise seeing an individual, then our staff will be able to plan in advance and should know, given that person's circumstances, what PPE they require. If that guidance changes again, and we would hope that guidance does change in dialogue with us to some extent, then the type of PPE that we are ordering on a weekly basis will need to adapt and change. But certainly for reassurance, if somebody's circumstances were to change from today until tomorrow, we should know that through the engagement via their GP or through their mental health team or service or through their care at home worker, and we would ensure obviously that the care workers then have the appropriate PPE for the subsequent interactions and care episodes that they have with the individual.
Thank you very much, David. Councillor Campbell, are you happy with that response?
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, I just feel that we need to just make sure that with the opening up of people across the community, that we get recognition of the numbers, so that make sure that we can keep those services in place consistently for everyone across the community. Thank you.
Okay. Members, no one has indicated any wanting to ask a question for Alan for points 5.7 to 5.17.
I've got a question to ask, but not for Alan.
Not for Alan, okay. So we can accept that section of the report. Thank you very much for that. Sandra, do you want to take over the next section of the report?
Thanks, Councillor McGurk. The finally section 6 provides any new service updates. Members will be aware from Louisa's regular briefings that further business supports went live yesterday, some being administered by Scottish Enterprise and some directly by the Council, and that's specifically the support to the newly self-employed. We would intend to bring an update on the progress of those schemes next week, if that would be helpful. And that concludes the report. Happy to take any final questions from elected members. Chair, thank you.
You're very welcome. Councillor Devine, you have a question.
Yeah, well, I've got 3 questions from different people. There was one for Don Traynor. He gave us a report last week on domestic abuse and said that it sort of plateaued. I was just wondering if it's gone up or down this week.
Okay.
Hello?
It's okay, you're still here. That's the country. And it's for different officers, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Sandra, can John Traynor come in, please?
Yes, John's on the call, thank you.
Good afternoon, Councillor. Good afternoon, Convener. Yeah, the referral rates for gender-based violence are slightly higher this week than previous weeks. I think, and that's reassuring to me in terms of people now having a confidence of reaching out. What we do, Councillor Devine, Convener, is each day we are monitoring the calls as they come in, and we have put out a few messages over the Council's social media over the past week in relation to child protection, adult protection and gender-based violence, and we'll continue to do that. So we are monitoring and we are being able to respond to those referrals that are being received.
Councillor Devine?
Yeah, that's great. Could I ask Gordon a question?
Yes, of course you can.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sure Gordon's seen the papers, the local paper today, and again it's running the story about amenity sites. I presume we're still in the same position as Gordon has repeatedly said, that we've not no intentions, but we're not able to open them just now.
Okay.
Could I?
Yes, of course. Sandra, is that okay for Gordon to come in?
Yes, certainly, Convener.
Please do, Gordon. Would you like to come in and respond to that for Councillor Devine?
Okay, thanks, Chair. Afternoon, Councillor Devine. Yes, the position is the same as it's been last week and the week before. It's still in the lockdown period. It's non-essential travel and social distancing. As I mentioned last week, there continues to be dialogue between local authorities, professional bodies and the Scottish Government on this matter, on its important community facilities, and looking at working together across Scotland when the time is right, and then how we do it in relation to what opening really looks like, tied in with anything that happens around a relaxation of lockdown as and when that develops.
Yeah, it's not a situation that's particular to us in Renfrewshire. It seems to be kind of nationwide throughout not just Scotland but Great Britain. I've got a question for Ian Nicholson, but if he doesn't mind, I'll phone him about it.
Yeah.
Just reply to you or to discuss your email yesterday, but I'll be a phone if that's okay.
That's fine, Eddie, no problem.
Okay, that's fine. Councillor Mackay, you wanted to come in with a question?
Yes, as in addition, I've got something to follow up on it. Councillor Devine's comment. I noticed that some of the English councils now are opening up their amenity sites and facilitating social distancing. And the sites that tend to be opening are the ones that have a separate entrance and exit facility. And so some of the English councils are doing that. I'm just wondering whether going forward, the Scottish councils or some of the Scottish councils who have the facilities to those amenity site facilities with separate entrance and exits could in fact make some progress. But I want to move on to the main problem, and there's a rise on social media of a noticeable increase in the number of people offering rubbish removal services without offering any credentials to prove that the rubbish is being disposed of correctly. Now, I've seen quite a number of pickup trucks and elderly vans, shall we say, driving around. Now, they must be picking up stuff from places, and I understand it's a strictly cash deal, and on that basis, where are they taking the stuff, and are people being fleeced over the opportunist traders, shall we say?
Okay, thank you. Sandra, who would you like to answer that for Councillor Mackay?
I think Sandra's...
John Trainor's just come in and Gordon there. Sandra's just lost her connection at the moment.
All right, okay.
Councillor McGurk, I'm happy to come in to speak to that, if that's okay.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Councillor Mackay. Essentially, anyone that collects waste has to be registered by the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency for Scotland. They have to be a registered carrier to show that as a business that they have got all the correct protocols in place in relation to how they collect it and also in terms of how they dispose of that. So I would be happy to pick up with you just in relation to any of these individual companies that you're aware of for us as a local authority to work with SEPA to investigate those matters further.
Councillor Mackay?
Thank you. I mean, any troll through social media will see people offering waste collection services, and it's always a personal message response. You know, you PM me for cash, and that's, to my mind, that's obvious that it's an unscrupulous person.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know that we, as a council, or trading standards, perhaps, taking steps to squash this before it gets too epidemic.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that. Well, Gordon will be able to take that forward for you. Councillor Devine, you wanted a question for Alan Russell?
Yeah. Again, I know I'm going on about this every week. It's his report on the implications of the report. One, the financial. Is it possible for Alan to give us some sort of, I don't mean today, but maybe next week or the week after, to have an insight into exactly what he means by I mean, it's a pretty powerful statement. I'm not going to read it out because it's quite a long statement. Considering it's considering about what the council have got to do to recover and how we recover. He's got a lot of significant questions in there that he's asking or saying to us, and I would like to know if I know he's probably going to laugh, but has he got any idea what this will mean to us in the end? Because councils are obviously being governments can say what they like, but at the end of the day, everything is comes down the way to us and the councils. and we're the ones that have to service it. But again, I'll say it, the governments have to make sure that they are going to fund councils, in particular Renfrewshire Council, so that after this is over, that we're not left high and dry, because it could, if we want to go all the way, it could mean a lot of job losses if the financial pressures aren't taken off of councils in the long run.
Okay. Alan, do you want to respond to that in the short term for Councillor Devine?
Yeah. No, I'm
later on.
Sorry, I'm happy. Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that I think, as I've highlighted last week, the process nationally is being coordinated through COSLA in relation to the financial cost of the response. And Councillor Devine's absolutely right. What's quite complex about this is that there is the impact of the immediate response and all that the council is doing to support communities. There will be a longer tail of that impact over the course of this year across a number of fronts, and you know, predominantly in areas of lost income, and that point's I think being increasingly understood by the government in relation to local authorities are different organisations to the health service, and it's the financial challenges that local authorities face are not just the additional costs that we're incurring, but to a lesser and greater extent across the country, depending on individual councils, is the impact of income loss, and that adds to the financial pressure. So it is a complex picture for local authorities, probably one of the more complex pictures in relation to the public sector response to this. So I think it will take a number of weeks for the clarity to begin to emerge of what we think at this stage the impact could be, and that engagement is happening with the government, and I think there's a growing recognition that it is quite a complex picture for the government. There is active engagement happening with COSLA and at both an officer and political level with the government in relation to, for example, the 155 million of consequentials that were announced previous week. So I mean, I think I'm happy with probably within a couple of weeks to bring a more substantial report on what the emerging financial picture is. But I would absolutely say to members that this will continue to change over the coming weeks and months. But undoubtedly, I think will require the council to consider carefully our current budget that we set for this year. I think that there will be absolutely a need to reconsider that in this context, and also the ongoing discussions with the Scottish Government in relation to the funding support to local government, and that is very much focusing not just on the immediate term, but also the remainder of this financial year, and indeed the more medium-term recovery period that will accompany not just the public health emergency, but also the economic impact of all of this.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Alan. Councillor Devine, you happy with that response just now, and we'll bring something back in a couple of weeks' time?
Yeah, happy just to, but I'd just like to pay tribute to every single person who works in or for Renfrewshire Council. I think up until now, and I don't expect to change, they've done a brilliant job, and people are seeing exactly how much that we as a public rely on them to do the jobs that we need.
Thanks very much for that. Councillor Mackay, you're actually next to ask a question, but your question's not on this theme. But Councillor Nicholson has a question on this. Would you allow Councillor Nicholson to ask his question first?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Thank you for that. Councillor Nicholson, can you come in, please?
Yeah, hi. It's not so much a question as a sort of hopefully a contribution to the discussion there that Councillor Devine had and the response. Alan's covered off some of the points about the finances, and he's covered off the point that what the Scottish Government are obviously looking for is for councils to demonstrate actuals, costs related to COVID-19, which are over and above. And obviously the COVID-19 response is probably impacted quite badly in other services. I know he talked about income as one area, but probably a lot of other services as well have been impacted financially. And the question of a budget as well, I think probably might end up being a national budget as opposed to a council's re-evaluating their budgetary positions as well. But the leaders meeting this morning at COSLA, agreed to write back to the minister and request / demand possibly that the Barnett consequentials, the £155 million, should be passed straight through to the councils, and that £155 million is not going to cover obviously the costs that the councils believe they've incurred over this. So there's a lot of discussion going on about how councils can recover back from this. And as Alan's saying, there's a huge amount of work. It's never happened before in the past where councils, the finance teams all over the country have had to pull together all this data and information. And as I said, so the discussions I've had with Alan and his team is that once we get clarity on exactly what the position is for Renfrewshire, that will be shared on this board as well. But be assured that COSLA is pushing hard for the Scottish Government to speed this up, because the longer it goes on, the more precarious the financial positions of councils may end up. If all we need now is just some support put in place to help us do what we need to do with COVID-19, and councils are at the front line of delivering everything that the Scottish Government wants to see delivered to that extent. So that work's ongoing as of this morning. That's just what I wanted to say, Chair.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Devine?
No, it was Alistair, it was next. I'm quite...
Sorry, it's Alistair. Alistair, do you want to come in with your question now, please?
Only if it's an appropriate point to come in with it, but I'm happy to hold on.
It is.
Until a more appropriate time, if you prefer.
No, this is a perfectly fine time for you, Chair.
Okay. I've had a number of people speaking to me. It's the fact that people are playing golf at Barshaw Park, yet the private courses have been closed. And I'm being asked if the private courses could be opened if they can practice social distancing. I understand that a number of golf courses in the Renfrewshire, Dumbartonshire area have formulated plans to minimise any risk and maintain social distancing and avoid contact with any common equipment such as bunker rakes and flagpoles and things like that. And given there's this inconsistency that people can play at Barshaw Park and nowhere else, could we look at this going forward and see if we can offer some relaxation to the golf clubs? After all, it would tick a couple of boxes in that it allows exercise, remote social contact, if you like, and it gives people the opportunity of maybe getting out of a confined space like a flat and observe some exercise. Could I have your opinion on that?
Yes, of course. Councillor Nicholson, you wanted to answer this one?
No.
Well, you didn't? No.
No, that was the previous one I came in on, the finance.
Apologies. Sandra, who would you like to answer that for Councillor Mackay?
I think Sandra's dropped off.
I think Sandra's dropped off.
So who's next in charge?
I mean, what I would say, I mean, when I don't know if Gordon will want to say in, but generally, I mean, obviously, golf wouldn't be, I suppose, seen as being, essential travel in terms of getting out and playing golf with, in a group. I know it's certainly some people use a golf course area for undertaking exercise, but I think in terms of actually playing golf and the associated risks with that, it's not something that would be promoted. I don't know if Gordon wants to say specifically about Barshaw Park.
Yeah, if that's okay, Chair. Just to clarify, Barshaw Golf Course is closed. So, as Alan said, I know people are taking the opportunity when the golf course is closed and to maybe take a walk in an area they might otherwise not do. But the golf course is closed. If folk are taking clubs on there to play, then that is not something that we would encourage, because the course is closed, and golf courses are closed across Scotland at this point in time. I think there was some talk through the national media this week around what sports could start to come back if lockdown was relaxed, and I think sports like golf and tennis were mentioned amongst that. But again, that would be very much a national direction that was the answer by the public health experts in relation to that, and to what sports, along with what other facilities and communities might be deemed as coming out with the category of non-essential, as Alan says, which they are at this point in time.
Okay, so Alistair, basically we'll come back on that once there's more direction from the government, I think.
Okay, well, I'd like to see a little bit more activity in the clamping down of the people who are playing golf on Barshaw Park then, because it seems to be one set of rules there and another set of rules everywhere else.
Okay, we'll see how we can manage that then. Thanks, Alistair.
Don't cut the grass, that will help.
That's very true. Right, members, that's us finished with section 2 of the report. It's now section 3. Alan, are there any items for decision by the board?
No items for decision, Councillor McGurk.
Okay, thanks very much for that. So section... Oh, you're back, Sandra?
I was just going to say, I think I didn't actually leave. I could hear you all. I just couldn't see connect. Couldn't speak.
Sorry,
I was beginning to take it personally.
We take it all back.
Sorry about that, Sandra. Right, go ahead,
That's
Sandra.
okay. No items for decision. Item 3. Item 4, Councillor McGurk, if that's what you were moving on to, we were, I think, proposing to change the date to next Thursday.
Yes, if members happy with that, because there's a holiday next Friday, so next Thursday at the same time, is that okay for you, members?
Okay.
Right, thank you very much for that. That's that. Thanks very much. Philippe, can I ask you to turn on